There are moments in a celebrity's life where everything they have built can shift in a single afternoon. Not because of a bad album. Not because of a failed tour. Not because of a public breakup or an embarrassing photo. But because of something far more serious. Something that cannot be managed with a press release, cannot be softened with a carefully worded apology, and cannot be buried under a new single or a magazine cover shoot. Katy Perry is living inside one of those moments right now. And the people paying closest attention to this story are not entertainment journalists. They are lawyers, police investigators, and legal analysts who understand exactly what is unfolding and exactly how serious it has become. To understand where things stand today, you have to go back to how this started. Because on the surface, it looked like nothing more than a celebrity social media spat. The kind of thing that trends for a day, disappears by Tuesday, and gets forgotten entirely within a week. Comment here, a clap back there, someone famous saying something shady about someone else famous. The internet has seen it 10,000 times. Nobody expected this one to be different. But this one was different. This one had something underneath it that most of those moments never have. It had a real criminal complaint sitting behind it, waiting for the right moment to surface. It began when a music publication posted a graphic on Threads that showed Katy Perry making a joke at Justin Bieber's expense following his Coachella performance. Bieber had headlined his first ever Coachella set and used old footage of himself as a teenager during the show. Perry took a jab at him online. It was quick, it was playful, and it fit the mood she had been carrying all weekend. She had shown up to Coachella with former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the two of them wearing matching outfits, essentially announcing their relationship to the world in the most public way possible. The energy from her side was loud and carefree. The Bieber comment was just another piece of that. Ruby Rose saw the post. And Ruby Rose did not respond with a joke. What Ruby Rose wrote in response to that Threads post changed the entire direction of this story. She said that Katy Perry had sexually mistreated her at a nightclub in Melbourne, Australia. She named the venue. She gave a date. She described what she said had happened in specific, graphic detail. She said she had been resting on her best friend's lap to avoid Katy Perry. She said Perry had bent down, moved her underwear aside, and placed herself against Ruby Rose's face. She said she had vomited as a result. She was not vague. She was not ambiguous. And she was not finished. Over the following hours she kept posting. She explained why she had stayed silent for so many years. She said she had been in her early 20s when it happened. She said Katy Perry later helped her obtain a United States visa. She said she had buried the truth because of that professional power Perry had held over her future. She then turned directly to Perry and dared her to file a lawsuit, saying Perry would never do it because the event had been real, there were witnesses, and she had photographs. Within 48 hours of those posts going live, the story had moved far beyond the territory of social media drama. Ruby Rose walked into a Melbourne police station and filed a formal report. 2 days after that, the Melbourne Sexual Offences and Child Abuse Investigation Team, known in Australian policing as SOSIT, confirmed publicly that they were investigating a historical sexual misconduct allegation tied to an incident at a licensed venue in Melbourne's Central Business District in the year 2010. The statement did not name Katy Perry. The statement did not name Ruby Rose. But no one needed names. Everyone already knew. And the confirmation from the police made this something entirely different from a celebrity feud. It made it a criminal matter. What a lot of people watching this story do not fully appreciate is what SOSIT actually is and what it means that they are the unit handling this case. This is not a general division of the Victoria Police shuffling paperwork between other priorities. SOSIT was built specifically and exclusively for cases involving sexual offences and child abuse. The unit operates across 28 locations throughout the state of Victoria. It has approximately 400 specially trained detectives. Every detective who joins the unit is required to complete a dedicated 4-week training program focused entirely on how to investigate sexual offense cases with sensitivity, precision, and legal rigor. SOSIT detectives work alongside trauma counselors and forensic specialists inside facilities called multidisciplinary centers. Their interviews are recorded using a method called VAR, video and audio recorded evidence, which is specifically designed to preserve the quality of testimony in cases exactly like this one. When this case landed with Saucett, it did not land in a filing cabinet. It landed in the hands of people whose entire career purpose is to find out what happened. And the legal framework they are working inside gives them a tool that makes the age of the allegation essentially irrelevant. Victoria, Australia has no statute of limitations on sexual offences. An incident from 2010 can be charged today. Can be charged in 10 years from now. There is no deadline. There is no expiry date on the law's ability to act. This is not a technicality. It is a deliberate policy decision made by Australian lawmakers who understood that survivors of sexual misconduct often do not come forward immediately, sometimes not for decades, and that the passage of time should not automatically protect an alleged perpetrator from facing consequences. That legal reality means Saucett can take whatever time is necessary to build their case. They are under no pressure from a ticking clock. Every witness they identify, every piece of corroborating evidence they locate, every statement they collect exists within a legal window that never closes. Now let us talk about the venue itself, because this piece of the story has a detail that almost nobody is stopping to examine properly. The nightclub where this alleged incident took place was called Spice Market. It operated in the basement of a building on Beanie Lane in Melbourne, right beside the Grand Hyatt Hotel on Collins Street. It was a large, impressively designed space that could hold around 600 people, styled after a Moroccan courtyard with a fountain and high-end interior features. It had a VIP section called the Genie Bottle where celebrities and high-profile guests would spend their evenings away from the general crowd. The club opened in 2009 and ran for years as one of Melbourne's most prominent nightlife venues. It also permanently closed its doors on January 1, 2026. That is 3 months before Ruby Rose posted her accusation publicly. 3 months before the police opened their investigation. The closure means the ownership has dissolved. Staff records from that era are almost certainly gone. Any surveillance footage that may have existed from that night in August 2010 has been wiped for over a decade, since Australian nightclubs in that period kept security footage for approximately 30 days before erasing it. The physical venue where this allegedly took place no longer exists as a functioning business. The only evidence that remains is the memory of the people who were present that night. A former manager of the club has spoken publicly about what he remembered from that evening. He confirmed Katy Perry and Ruby Rose were both in attendance. He confirmed they spent time in the VIP area. He confirmed they were drinking. He said Perry had been moving between the VIP section and the main floor throughout the night, dancing in the crowd at various points. He said the venue's security team was worried about photographs being taken, so they arranged a private car and had both Perry and Rose escorted out through a fire exit at the back of the building. He said he believed they were taken to another well-known Melbourne venue called the Peel Hotel after leaving Spice Market. When asked directly about any alleged misconduct that night, the manager said he was not aware of it. He said he was not aware of anyone vomiting. That is a very carefully constructed statement. He did not say it did not happen. He said he was not aware of it. Anyone with a basic understanding of legal risk management will recognize the difference immediately. Here is where this story becomes genuinely complicated in a way that the criminal investigation will have to navigate very carefully. In 2011, just 1 year after the night at Spice Market, Ruby Rose wrote a published column for a major Australian media outlet. In that column, she described the night at Spice Market. But the version she described was not a trauma. It was a funny story about losing her sobriety streak, having too many drinks, and embarrassing herself in front of a celebrity. She wrote that she had vomited on Katy Perry's foot. She framed the whole evening as a cautionary tale. There was no mention of misconduct. There was no mention of anything being done to her without her consent. The column was light-hearted. It was self-deprecating. And it directly contradicts the account she gave on Threads in April of 2026. When that column resurfaced and spread across social media within hours of her posts going viral, Ruby Rose addressed it head-on. She said she had deliberately turned the night into a funny story because she did not know how else to process what had happened. She said Katy Perry had later assisted her in getting her United States visa, which gave Perry a direct form of professional power over her life and livelihood. She said that dependency had kept her quiet for years. She described the psychological cost of carrying that silence across almost 2 decades. That explanation is consistent with what researchers and trauma specialists have documented extensively. Studies have found that survivors of misconduct involving powerful figures frequently remain silent for years, or even decades, precisely because the person who harmed them also holds influence over their professional future. The fear of losing opportunity, income, or access is a documented reason for delayed disclosure. Ruby Rose's explanation fits squarely inside that documented pattern. But that explanation, however psychologically coherent it may be, does not make the legal problem disappear. In a courtroom, a written account published 1 year after the alleged event, in which the person describing it characterizes it as a funny and embarrassing personal story with no mention of any misconduct, is a powerful piece of evidence for the defense. If this case ever reaches a courtroom, whether criminal or civil, that column will almost certainly be presented as the real, contemporaneous version of events. It will be argued that a person who had just experienced sexual misconduct would not have written about that same night as a personal comedy anecdote 1 year later. That argument is not legally airtight. Trauma responses are complex. People minimize, deflect, and reframe experiences all the time. But it gives the opposing side significant material to work with. The response from Katy Perry's team when this all broke was worth examining very carefully, because it was not written the way a typical celebrity denial is written. Most crisis PR responses are warm. They use phrases like deeply saddened or committed to healing or we urge privacy during this difficult time. Perry's representative used language that was cold, precise, and constructed in the specific way that legal teams construct opening salvos before litigation. The word categorically was chosen to eliminate any space for partial truth. The word reckless was chosen to establish a mental state relevant to legal proceedings. The description of Ruby Rose as having a history of making public allegations against multiple individuals was not an offhand observation. It was a deliberate attempt to establish a character pattern that could be introduced in a future legal proceeding. The statement read like a document written not for the press but for a judge. That brings up the legal landscape in Australia, which is dramatically different from the United States when it comes to defamation. In American courts, a public figure pursuing a defamation claim has to prove the person who made the statement acted with actual malice, meaning they either knew it was false or showed reckless disregard for whether it was true. That standard is extraordinarily difficult to meet, which is why public figures in America rarely win defamation suits. Australia flips the burden entirely. Under Australian defamation law, once a statement is shown to have been made, the person who made it is required to prove its truth. The plaintiff does not need to prove falsity. The defendant must prove the statement was accurate or fall back on another valid defense. This is why Australian courts have become a preferred venue for high-profile individuals seeking legal recourse after public accusations. The environment is structurally more favorable to the person claiming they were defamed. Perry's legal team understands this terrain completely. What makes a defamation filing strategically risky for Perry despite that legal advantage is the discovery process it would trigger. Filing a civil lawsuit in Australia would compel both parties to disclose communications, records, and witness lists. That means Perry would be required to produce her own documentation from that period. Her own messages. Her own accounts of the night. Her own witnesses. And those witnesses would be subject to questioning. Any defamation suit could inadvertently surface information that Perry's legal team would much prefer to keep private. That two-way exposure is almost certainly the reason no lawsuit has been filed yet, and any claims circulating online suggesting one has already been filed appear to be false as of this recording. No credible news organization has confirmed any such filing. The witnesses are now the central variable in all of this. Sauce detectives are almost certainly in the process of locating and speaking to people who were at Spice Market that night. That includes the hair and makeup professional who was with Katy Perry. It includes the male friend who was with Ruby Rose. It includes the car driver who transported both women from the venue. It includes any security staff from the club who can still be located. It may also include staff from the Peel Hotel, which was reportedly the next stop that evening. Each one of those people carries a piece of the record of that night inside their memory. Each one of them could provide testimony that either supports Ruby Rose's account or creates serious questions about it. 16 years is a long time to hold a memory with precision, but Saucet investigators are trained specifically to work with long-delayed testimony. That is part of the purpose for which the unit was designed. Ruby Rose has also said she possesses photographs from that night. She has not released them. She has not described them in detail. But if those photographs show her and Katy Perry together at the venue, if they carry metadata or timestamps that place them at the location during the relevant time frame, they become corroborating evidence for the basic facts of the encounter, even if they cannot document the alleged misconduct directly. The fact that this incident occurred in August of 2010, just weeks before Instagram launched, means there is no digital trail from that era of the kind we would expect from any public event today. No live posts, no tagged uploads, no location-stamped photo dumps. Whatever visual record exists from that night lives only in whatever private files Ruby Rose has preserved for 16 years. Whether she turns those over to investigators, and what they actually show, could matter enormously. Australia and the United States maintain an active extradition treaty that covers sexual offences. If Saucet were ever to complete its investigation, refer the case to the Office of Public Prosecutions, and if that office determined there was a reasonable prospect of conviction and decided to file formal charges against Katy Perry, the Australian government would have the legal mechanism to request her extradition from the United States. That process would not be fast. Extradition cases involving international figures have historically taken years to resolve. But the mechanism exists. The treaty is real. And the absence of a statute of limitations means investigators and prosecutors face no artificial deadline forcing them to rush a case forward before the evidence is fully developed. Katy Perry was not in a strong position before any of this began. Her most recent album had been widely criticized as the weakest work of her career. Her decision to collaborate with a producer who had been publicly accused of misconduct by another artist created a major backlash from her own fanbase. A heavily publicized trip to space on a private rocket had generated mockery rather than admiration. A long-term relationship had ended. And while her world tour has performed well commercially, the broader arc of her public image has been trending downward for the better part of 2 years. This scandal did not arrive into a vacuum. It arrived into a reputation that was already under strain. And that context makes the legal, cultural, and personal stakes of this investigation significantly higher than they would have been at the peak of her influence. There are 4 people who hold the next significant move in this story. Ruby Rose, who has said she has evidence she has not yet released. Katy Perry, whose legal team has signaled they may pursue civil action but has not done so yet. The head of Saucet, who will decide when and whether the investigation has enough material to refer upward. And an unnamed witness or group of witnesses, who were present at Spice Market on a night in August 2010 and have been carrying whatever they saw ever since. Any one of those 4 could move this story into an entirely new chapter. One photograph, one witness statement, one legal filing could change the direction of everything overnight. Right now, all 4 of them are still. The investigation is ongoing. The silence from Perry's camp remains carefully maintained. And the machinery of Australian criminal justice, built specifically for cases like this one, continues to turn.